What's going on, car family? I'm Ben Wayne.
I'm Isha Wayne.
And today I just wanted to do a casual video while we're taking a break from this quarantine and talk to you about how I got into cars in the first place.
So let me break it down to you. I met this man how many years ago?
Probably like 8 years. You gonna pop quiz me on the video?
And so it wasn't a pop quiz.
All right.
You felt a little stressed, a little tension.
Yeah, I did. I'm not sure I like that.
And he was totally into cars all the time. And so I'll never forget, like, just from being around him, we were at lunch with a friend of ours, and what did I see on the road? It was like a Ferrari, or was it
It was like a Ferrari or something like that.
Man, I called it out like that, like clockwork. And I knew he was so proud of me.
I was impressed. I was impressed.
That's my girl.
I was impressed. I mean, she called out like the model. Like, it wasn't just Ferrari. It was like Ferrari 458.
Yeah.
So it was. I was proud. That was a proud moment. I think that might have been the time I knew. But anyways, I've been into cars.
I've been into cars, since then.
Yeah. I've been into cars as long as I could remember. It started at a very young age. Growing up, I was exposed to a lot of it. My father actually drove a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, so he'd been into cars for a long time as well, and he had some friends into cars as well. So, being that was one of the first cars I was exposed to, it kind of set the standard for, details that I would look for when I was in any other type of car. And of course that didn't happen, right? So that's when you start to learn that, certain cars are, more special than others.
You have the insert picture here.
I'll drop a photo.
Oh, okay.
So between riding in my dad's car all the time, from a young age, people would always come up to it and stop him and ask him questions about it. One time we were at the mall, and one guy randomly asked him for a ride in it, and I was like, Dad, why did that person you didn't even know ask you for a ride in the car? And he explained to me, and he started giving me DuPont Registry magazines, and I start going through the magazines. Yeah, I would go through the magazines religiously. I mean, like, on the bus ride to school, I'd be flipping through it and stuff like that. I'd take him into class during lunch.
Programming you.
I was being programmed. Yeah, I was being programmed. My brother too. He's into cars. I have an older brother. He's into import, like Nissan Z cars, specifically a 300ZX twin turbo. So he's into stuff like that. So from a very young age, he started programming us. And I had a friend who lived up the street. We went to the same school. His name was Travis, one of my best childhood friends ever. And, his father, his name was Alan, and he and my dad were best friends. And since we went to the same school, sometimes I would ride to school with Travis's dad. Travis's dad had this red car. It was a sports car. And, one memory I have of that car was getting into the car. And, since you're little, you would kind of fall into it because the floor was so low. And, whenever we'd pull up to school, there'd be this huge crowd of people gathered around. And, at a young age, you really don't understand, everything that's going on around you. So, years later, I'm reading through DuPont Registry, and I see this car, and I'm like, man, that car looks familiar. And it was the car that my friend Travis's dad had. And it turned out to be a Ferrari F40. So I was riding in one of the greatest cars of all time, and didn't even realize it. That's how young I was. And that was the car that actually first broke 200 miles per hour. First production car.
Riding in a Ford Windstar.
So coming up and being surrounded and exposed to stuff like that, you kind of develop an interest. Cars, I used to draw them all the time, and I love the way they were engineered. I love the way they were put together. So fast forward a few years, this car comes out called the Dodge Viper. And when you see that car, those of you who are around back then, at the time, And even now, there was nothing else on the street that looked like that car. Nothing. It was so curvaceous. It was raw. And, you know, it's built right here in America. And, man, to this day, I still love that car. I almost bought one. I'll get to that a little later. But, you know, there was this TV show that came on called Viper. Tell them how you know about that.
Because he bought like the entire, how many seasons? 7?
It was
8?
like 5 seasons.
Oh, seasons of Viper. You know, you have to say it like that because the guy on there says Viper. You know, like.
Isha's like, why are you watching this old show? Because I'm reliving my childhood. Let me ride. Let me ride.
And I'm sitting there like this.
Let me
what's
ride.
Gonna happen? And why does the car transform? Can they not see it?
So anyway, it was a cop show, and these cops drove around in a Dodge Viper, and you know, whenever there was trouble, they would hit a button and it would switch into defender mode. And
it looked terrible. Okay. I mean, it looked good for the time.
Anyway, so that made me love the car even more. So I started, you know, I'm in high school, you know, start thinking about, you know, what I want to do and where I want to go to school at. So I love the way, you know, these cars are engineered. Hence why in a lot of these reviews I say rides engineered for excellence, because they're truly engineered for that. And I'm also into planes too. I've had a strong passion for planes just as much as I love cars.
So this love for cars
and planes,
that's why you ended up becoming
an aerospace engineer. Yes. So I went to school at this school in Daytona Beach, Florida called Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So I left Virginia Beach, went to Ocean Lakes High School, and then went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida, and studied like crazy. And this was a really hard school to stay in. I mean, we put in more hours in the library than people did at their jobs. And it was truly, looking back, it was an incredible experience, but it was a struggle because you needed to put in some work. But, you know, you had people from all different types of backgrounds. A lot of the kids went there, had their own planes already, or they had cars. So my freshman year, the person staying across the hallway from me actually had a Dodge Viper. Like, what are you doing coming to college in a Dodge Viper? That's insane. It's awesome, but, and you know, we saw a couple Ferrari 355s there. One kid, my senior year, pulled up to the library in a McLaren SLR. I mean, why are you even going to college at this point? I mean, you know what I mean? Why are you going to college? So I end up graduating, and around this time, I start to think back. My senior year in high school, one of my dad's friends pulls up in a car. It was a Mercedes SL. This was the first year they did the retractable hardtop. And I was torn between that car and the Viper. It was all I thought about when I was in college. And I knew at the point, I didn't have a car yet, but I was either getting a Dodge Viper or a Mercedes SL, or I wasn't getting a car at all. I was going to wait till I could get what I wanted, because I didn't put in all that hard work not to get what I wanted. So I get my first job at NASA, at Goddard Space Flight Facility in Greenbelt, Maryland. And I save up, and there's a sapphire blue Dodge Viper RT10 2001 that I was looking at. And you know, it's kind of like this, you know, never meet your heroes. That's the saying, because it's like you think they're all great until you get up close to them. And not that the Viper isn't an awesome car, but that car is just so raw. That cannot be your only car.
It is.
If you have a Viper, you have to have something else. You know what I mean? You have to have something else. So I'm also looking at Mercedes-Benz SLs, particularly either an SL55 or an SL500. So since this is my first car, you know, months go by and I end up finding an SL500. It was silver with black interior.
Insert picture here.
I'll see if I can find a photo of that. And I love that car, man, because while it wasn't a Viper, it was still a roadster with all the luxury features that you would want in a car that you drive on a daily basis. And it turns out when my mother was very young, the Mercedes-Benz SL was the car she always wanted. And I thought it was funny how somehow that car ended up eventually being in the family, regardless, even though she never got it. She ended up getting a Jaguar. She wasn't as heavy into cars as my dad was. So I ended up getting the Mercedes SL and keeping that a couple years. Moved down to Atlanta, Georgia from Maryland to be closer to family, and ended up eventually trading in that SL for another one. I wasn't even looking for it. I was driving home from church one day and I saw this car sitting out on the parking lot of a dealership called Atlanta Classic Cars. You guys are familiar with them. I shoot with them all the time. Well, when I was in college, during every single break, I would visit the Atlanta Classic Cars parking lot just to take a look at the Mercedes SL. That's how infatuated with this car I was. Every chance I had, I would be on that lot. I'm sure the people on the lot got tired of me at one point.
Yeah. Are you gonna buy it today?
Look, are you buying it? Are you just here? Like, so I had to see that car. So anyways, this is after college, second job now, and I'm driving home and I see this white Mercedes SL on the lot, had red interior, and you know how I feel about red interiors. I traded my silver one in so fast. I was like, I gotta have this one, and I've held on to that one. Probably gonna keep that car forever. And
so let's fast forward. I'm going to get my red Bentayga. Okay, I'm cutting your story short because we're fast forwarding to me now.
Okay.
Because I'm in the picture now. Okay. And I'm just
Yeah, you're right. You're in the picture now. So
red Bentayga.
I'd always be watching car videos on YouTube, and you know, my mom was like, "Well, why don't you give this a shot?" And I'm like, "Nah, you know, I don't want to do that. You know, I don't know if I could do it." And you know, it seemed more complicated. How would I get access to cars, so on and whatnot? So she was like, "Why don't you give it a shot?" So since I was always at the Mercedes dealership, you know, I had this friend who I mentioned in my videos named Jessie. And, you know, she was really supportive and helpful. She was like, you know what? You can come shoot anything here that you want. And, you know, that's a type of person. Yeah. That's how I got started. You know, the first car we ever shot was a Mercedes AMG GT. And it wasn't the best video looking back at it, but, you know, you got to get started somewhere. And then from there, we just kept on shooting until we got a formula that seemed like, you know, it worked. And,
here we are today.
Here we are, yeah. You know, I made it over to Bentley, Atlanta one time. I drove over there and said, you know, I got to get access to these cars. Went over there, met a friend over there. You know, he's one of my best friends ever, Sid Barron. Went over there, and you know, he was kind of skeptical at first.
What are these people doing?
It's like, you know, what is
like
this,
watching in the background?
What is this guy doing?
Okay.
Like, what does he want? So we shot the first video there. And Sid was like, you know, it was good. You know, you were kind of shy, but it was pretty good. So, you know, I started shooting over there repeatedly. And, you know, they started liking the videos. Customers started seeing the videos. You know, one guy from Australia saw the video we did on the Bentley extended wheelbase Mulsanne.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he ordered that. And that car is only like 1 of 25 in the States.
Yeah.
So,
the
you know,
EWB.
Things took off from there. And, you know, here we are today shooting cars. Still trying to get access to other brands. Ferrari is my favorite brand. I would love to film Ferrari.
If you guys know someone out there where we can get our hands on some Ferraris or just other, you know, vehicles in general.
In general,
like,
yeah, anything helps.
Email him, connect. I mean, it's the content that you guys want to see on the channel as well.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, it's a win-win, you know. He'll do the research.
Anything. So, you know, a lot of you guys tell me you want to see like McLaren, or even if it's like the new Ford F-150 or the new Corvette. You know, it's all about making that connection with the dealerships or prospective owners. You can't just, it's a lot harder than just walking in the dealership and saying, hey, I would like to film this car. Even if you have business cards or a website, not everybody's going to be willing to give you that chance. A lot of people, you know, don't understand the power of social media. You know, you got a lot of people running these dealerships who simply just have no understanding of.
They're not even on social media.
Yeah, not even on social media. Like in 2020.
You would be shocked. I work in marketing, you know, daily, and you would be shocked to see what some of these corporations, social media and marketing looks like. You would be like, what? Why haven't they hired, you know, a full marketing team?
Right.
And, you know, social media is just one component of marketing.
Right.
That's a full-time job.
Right.
You know, so yeah, you guys would be shocked.
Nobody, well, a few people want to still go into the dealership and then learn about the car there. You know, if I'm looking at a car,
they want an honest opinion because the salesperson is just trying to sell it.
Right, right.
And not everybody is honest.
Right. So if I'm looking at a car, I'm going to YouTube and I'm going to see what people have to say about the car. Or, you know, I just want to know the specs about it. I'll go on YouTube. I want to know da-da-da-da-da. And then I want to go in there with somewhat of an education on the car I'm looking at.
You already know we're going to give you an honest review.
Yeah.
I do all the time.
So, you know, that's just how it is nowadays. So few people understand that. So it's hard for me to just go into a dealership, and I've tried, and just be like, hey, I do X, Y, and Z. Here's some of my videos. Here are a couple of letters of recommendation or references. And, you know, people start letting you shoot. It doesn't work like that all the time. So thankfully, we're going to start with Fiat Chrysler Automotive, the SCA Automotive Group. As soon as this coronavirus pandemic thins out, you know, hopefully they'll start sending me media cars, Jeeps, Dodges, stuff like that. And then we'll start branching out, you know, Nissans, other stuff, you know, stuff you see every day. I understand a lot of you guys want to see that type of stuff or want to see my style of review on those types of cars. So that's something that we're working on doing in the near future. So that's about it.
I'm going to get my hands on a Bentayga.
Oh gosh, you and this Bentayga. So that's about it. You know, just wanted to let you guys know the background story behind all this, why I started doing this. And I appreciate all the videos you guys watch. I do get a lot of your emails and messages. I do appreciate the support. I truly do. And Isha, I appreciate your support being here. Isha's essentially part of every video. If she's not in the video, she's behind the camera.
Behind the scenes.
So she's there putting in that work on these Saturday mornings, and I truly appreciate that. So on that note, thank you guys for watching. Please be sure to
Taking this channel.
please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.